So let's talk about neurodiversity. What is it? What is neurodiversity and what are the misconceptions around neurodiversity, right? So neurodiversity simply means a deviation in brain development, right? It just means that a person's brain is developing differently from what the typical brain development looks like, or their brain is developing slower than the typical brain, or that this person's brain is developing differently from the typical brain. Prior to the 1990s, neurodiversity was seen as an abnormality or a sickness or, a disease, until Judy Singer came to scene to say, no, this is actually not a disease. Just the way we have faces that are different, just the way human beings come in different shapes, color, and sizes. Neurodiversity is the same. It just means that we have different types of brain, right? So we have people who have the typical brain, and we have people whom their brain is, are developing differently. It is not a medical condition. It is not a sickness, right? However, these differences or this delay can show up and interfere with some of their behavioral domains. And when I say the behavioral domains, what I mean is it can show up in, how they retain attention. It can show up in how they communicate. It can show up in their learning abilities. It can show up in their sensory processing, social abilities. It can show up in their speech. It can show up in different behavioral domains. And when I say it can show up in these behavioral domains, not necessarily in a negative way, right? Because most times when we say, somebody is neurodivergent, we just see it that the person is abnormal or the person is disabled, right? No, they are actually differently abled. Because, for example, some neurodivergent people have amazing memories that the typical brain cannot even process. They're able to retain and reproduce memories in a way that the typical brain can never achieve, right? Some neurodivergent people have, amazing, genius mathematical abilities. They're able to solve complex mathematics, just off the top of their head, without any calculators, without anything. So it's not always negative. These people are actually differently abled. They have a different way of communicating because their brain has developed differently. They have a different way of expressing emotions, and sometimes it could be challenging. Also, it could be a challenge for them maybe to process information, to learn in the conventional way at the same pace as somebody who has the typical brain, right? So when we start to see them as people who show up to the world differently because of the differences in their brain development, then we show up to them in a way that is more curious to understand how they want to show up in the world based on how their brain has developed. And that way we're able to understand them better and to support them better, instead of looking at them as people who are disabled, who are sick, and who are abnormal, right? I hope this makes sense, and this shapes or shifts your perspective around what neurodiversity is. Neurodiversity isn't a spiritual problem. It isn't a child trying to be stubborn. It isn't a child being an olodo or not being able to learn. It just means, this child or this person is saying, my brain is different. I don't see things the way you see them. I can't do things the way you do them. I'm just different. And please try and understand.